And we have our friend Rima Amin from Chalkbeat who is joining us to talk about a big talker for today and possibly the next week. We're talking about CPS trying to work out this budget, over $734 million that they've got to work through here from a shortfall. Rima?
Yeah, lots going on with the district's budget, and actually the new fiscal year has already begun, and so the board has to pass a budget in the next 2 weeks. Otherwise, it will be violating state law. So there's a lot of things going on. The district presented an official budget proposal yesterday to the Chicago Board of Education. They have proposed to close this deficit through some cuts, but also through some additional savings, some additional one-time revenue that they found. But perhaps the most controversial part of this budget is that the district is essentially not including a $175 million pension reimbursement to the city of Chicago, which the mayor, has said that he is expecting CPS to pay. But CPS, which is not legally obligated to pay that amount, has opted for now to not provide that payment, which has become a political heated point of this entire budget process.
Yeah, and I'm doubtful that they want to pass it on to the state, and I'm doubtful that the state legislators are going to say, sure, we'll bail you out, Chicago School District. What are you hearing about that?
Right. So the district has essentially said, we will pay this pension payment or reimbursement to the city if we get more state revenue, as you said, but also if the city will provide more dollars related to TIF districts, which are districts meant to that capture taxpayer dollars, and they're meant to spur economic development. The city provides, a surplus of these funds to city agencies every year, including CPS. And so CPS has said if you'll declare more TIF surplus money, then we would be okay with paying this payment. But of course, that from the city's perspective, that is not good enough for them. And yes, the state has, there are state lawmakers who have expressed desire to boost education funding even more than they have committed to, but it does not appear right now that the state is planning to have an emergency session or anything to directly address this. So it doesn't seem at this point that additional state money is coming, but City Hall, CPS to some extent, unions are continuing their push to get the state to pony up more money.
Yeah, and let's talk through, you mentioned a lot of different aspects of this. It gets very muddy in terms of the politics of it all. Obviously, the kids are at the heart of it. We don't want anyone to forget about that, that the most important aspect of education, of course, is teaching our next generation. But from a political standpoint, you have a hybrid board now. You have an interim CEO as they search for a new possible superintendent. There's so many things that are kind of like in flex right now. How does that influence this major decision that needs to be made before it's all set in stone?
Yeah, and just to add to that, you're talking about a district that has seen so much leadership turnover in less than a year, less than 12 months. You've seen an entire board resign, and then a new board come in, and then another new board come in, and you have this interim CEO now. Many observers had assumed that the interim CEO, Macklin King, would align very closely with the mayor's office. She worked at the mayor's office, first under former Mayor Lori Lightfoot, but then a couple years under the current mayor, Brandon Johnson. And when she was voted in, all of the appointed members who were appointed to the school board by the mayor voted to hire her, and largely most of the elected members voted against hiring her. And so the thought was, she probably will include this pension payment. There probably won't be a fight with City Hall. This budget might include a borrowing plan that City Hall favors and that previous district leadership didn't like. And I think it stunned a lot of observers that that's not what's happening, that she did present a budget that doesn't include this pension reimbursement, that city leaders are not happy about. And so it introduces an entirely new dynamic that I'm not sure people were expecting. And so I think in terms of leadership and how this budget situation gets worked out, I think it'll be really important to see who aligns with her, who backs her proposal, and if there will be, the mayor has a majority on this school board, so will there be enough pressure to potentially get her to change the budget proposal so that they can pass something by the time that they legally need to?
Yeah, and as Anita said, the students are at the center of this. Test scores are not up to snuff in reading and math. Yet there's this increased spending, so much so, and I know you guys did an article about this, enrollment has dropped over the past 10 years by 177,000 students, and spending has just gone through the roof.
Yeah, I think in terms of test scores, you have to keep in mind that just like districts across the country, CPS students have gone through a lot in the past 5-6 years with the pandemic, remote learning, and actually, the district has touted that it's been making academic gains that some outside studies have found have really surpassed other big districts. A lot of that they have tied to the additional federal COVID relief money that they used, almost $3 billion they pumped into additional staffing, tutoring, programs at schools. These are costs that they invested in, but also relied on one-time dollars that have now expired, but they want to hold on to a lot of these investments. They've also agreed to a lot of labor contracts that call to keep these staffing investments and other things in place. And so they're, I think anyone probably like you, like parents, families would say that, yes, there's a ways to go with academic gains. The district's argument is, yes, and we can't cut because that'll make us fall behind. That won't allow us to make gains on top of what we've already done. And that's kind of been their argument. And that's why they don't want to do things like, do this pension reimbursement, because they're worried that that'll mean cuts to classrooms.
Yeah, so many important arguments, honestly, in many different facets when this overall decision has to be made. And again, school starts on the 18th. So just give us a lineup of like where we are and where we need to be by the end of the month.
Yeah, in terms of, so as you said, school starts next week. There won't be a budget in place by then. In terms of, the district has said they are working around the clock to get classrooms ready. A couple weeks ago, the district announced that it was cutting close to 500 custodial positions as it brings custodian work in-house instead of, contracting with private vendors. And so I think there's questions about, how prepared classrooms and schools will be. The district, again, has said that they're working around the clock to make sure school buildings are ready. In terms of the budget, the board needs to pass a plan by August 28th, essentially by the end of August. And so we're just going to have to see. They're also having additional community meetings, I believe, next week. And so the public can attend those and provide feedback. And I think after that, we'll have to see how the plan potentially changes or how board opinion changes on this plan.
Oh, you've broken this down so nicely for us, and we know it's a complicated issue. Rima Amin, thank you so much from Chalkbeat.
Thank you so much for having me.